Hi, I'm Yasmin, a wife and a proud new mom with a background in perinatal nursing. Welcome to Birth Unboxed, where we talk about all things birth, whether it's unassisted free birth, home birth with a midwife, or in a hospital. I believe every woman deserves the right to choose how and where she gives birth. I created this podcast to raise awareness so women can make informed choices and feel empowered in their births. By sharing stories and learning from one another, we can reclaim our power and become the ultimate authority in our own birthing experiences. Sisterhood is powerful, and I am so glad you're here. Let's get started. Hi, welcome to the Birth Unboxed podcast. Agatha, thank you so much for joining us today and taking the time to tell your story. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you.
Why don't we start with a little bit of an introduction? Let us know where you're calling from and how many kids you have.
Sure, so my name's Agatha, and I'm from Brazil, but I live in England. And I've got one little girl, and and then I'm just calling from rainy England.
It's already nighttime there for you, so thank you for taking the time. Let's get into your story. So, how old is your daughter right now?
Sure, so my little one, she is 3 years and 9 months, I think, or 8 months. She'll be 4 in January.
Okay, nice. So let's try to go back a few years to the first moment when you found out you were pregnant. How was the pregnancy for you? Was it a good pregnancy? Were you done with it and ready to give birth, or were you enjoying being pregnant?
I think after the first trimester, I felt a lot better, but it was because we've had losses in the past, so it kind of tainted the experience a little bit. So it's just like I spent all the time just very anxious about whether it was going to stick, whether it was going to last, whether it was real. Like there was just a lot of those kinds of emotions, like right at the beginning. And then we were both really excited when
Mm-hmm.
we got positive, but we were kind of like, I would say like kind of apprehensively hopeful, I think is probably the good way to describe it. And and then the first trimester, I would say, went pretty well. I had a few food aversions and that kind of stuff, and but I wasn't really nauseous, but there were just things that I just definitely couldn't eat. Like it was like something that just took over me and was just like, you cannot eat this. Like I remember like I was trying so hard to be healthy and eat vegetables and like work out and do all this stuff, and then my body was like, you have to stop. You have to literally
Yeah.
do nothing, and you have to eat everything that's just the color beige. So that's pretty much how I ate, and I felt really
Yeah.
bad that I was doing it, but I was taking my vitamins and stuff. So but after that first trimester, I really began to enjoy it because I think after I got my the gender scan at about in the UK you do like a 20-week scan, but you can pay for like a private one
Mm-hmm.
at about 16 weeks to find out the gender. And then after that one, I think I was just like, oh, okay, everything's probably fine. Like the probability of this cult going to the end is quite likely.
Yes.
And I remember like every other day I would like go into like a miscarriage probability calculator to see like what the probability of the possibility of it happening again would be. And then so it kind
Mm-hmm.
of really tapered off at the end, like at the end of that first trimester. And then I got that gender scan, found out the gender, and I was like, oh, I can finally connect to this baby. I can finally connect to this pregnancy. And then to be fair, the second trimester was amazing. I felt great. I was like swimming, I was working out, I was just having like the best time. And then we were moving house in the third trimester as well. So in the third trimester, I was feeling good as well. I felt great, to be honest. And I couldn't really eat that much, so I wasn't a very hungry pregnant person. I was just like
Hmm.
but I was eating a lot of like antacids, like Gaviscon. Here they have Gaviscon in the UK.
Oh, yeah.
So I was just crunching on those pills like constantly in the third trimester. But
Mm-hmm.
other than that, it was great. And then we moved
Yeah.
house, and I was on ladders painting. Like, and my husband was telling me off. Like, he's like, "Get down from that ladder, like you're crazy." But I was just in like nest mode.
Yes. I'm glad you had a good pregnancy, and just the first trimester was a little bit rough in terms of
Mm.
the anxiety that you faced because of the prior miscarriage. I also, as you know, had a missed miscarriage for my first pregnancy. I think women in general are a bit anxious in the beginning because miscarriages are so common, especially in those first 12 weeks.
Mm.
And before you start feeling the baby, before you see the baby, it's like, am I even pregnant? But when you've had a previous loss, it really takes a toll, and it becomes way more intense, and you're stressing about it. And it does get better, as you were saying. For me as well, it did, as you start to feel the kicks and you see the belly growing. But it's just like something that's on the back of your mind constantly. And I've spoken to a lot of other women who have had miscarriages, and it's the same. Just like they just need to see their baby. Like until their baby's there, it's always in the back of their mind. So that can be very stressful.
Yeah.
So you are in the UK, so I know it's a little bit different, and that's why I like bringing people on from different countries so that we can talk a little bit about the differences in the healthcare system when it comes to birth and the options available to women, just so we know that, like, okay, this is not how it's done in my country or my city, but this is the standard somewhere else. And it might just open up some options for you, for whoever's listening, when they go to plan their birth. They can be like, you know what, I like it how they do it in the UK. I'm going to talk to my provider about that and see if we can incorporate that. Because, you know, there's no country that does it perfectly. So we can try to tweak it and pick a little bit from each country and see what works best for us. So how is it in the UK in terms of when you find out you're pregnant? What is the standard there? Do you have an OB? Is it a midwife? Explain it to us.
So in the UK, how it works is that as soon as you find out you're pregnant, you wait, I think, about 6 to 8 weeks, and then you have to message you have to do a self-referral to the midwife team. So in the UK, like midwifery is like the standard. So that is just the standard practice. So you don't go through your general practitioner or an OB or anything like that. Like that's super rare. And then even private healthcare in the UK is geared towards midwifery first. That's always like the front of like that care. So then you get assigned a midwife, and that's how it usually happens. I gave birth during the pandemic, so I wasn't assigned a specific midwife. I just had whoever was going at the time, which I don't recommend giving birth in a pandemic. But
Yes.
but usually the standard is that you get assigned a single midwife, and then she follows along your entire pregnancy. And then at the beginning, in that first trimester, I think you only get face-to-face contact about 2 times. And then the further along you go, the more contact you get. So there's more face-to-face. There's more like the use of the Doppler. They like weigh you and they check you and they ask a lot about you. But in that initial appointment, when you get in the first trimester, they really give you a lot of information. They really want to ascertain as much about you as possible. And they ask about things like your family history and your mental health. And they ask for a blood sample from dad, blood sample from mom, to make sure there's no like genetic incongruency or anything like that. Or if you're a sickle cell
That's
carrier, so that if
interesting.
they're not a sickle cell carrier.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because like I am a sickle cell carrier, but my husband isn't. So they were like, oh, that's fine. But they make sure that both people have
Okay.
had their genetics tested
Mm-hmm.
just in case.
Oh,
And then
interesting.
they,
Do you think it
yeah, so
was,
it's,
sorry to interrupt, did they request the blood work for your partner because you had the sickle cell trait, or is that standard? Do they always do that? Do you know
that's
if that's the standard?
that's standard. So like no matter what, they'll always do both. So they'll tend to do both.
Oh, cool.
And then so with that, then you get offered like a test for Down syndrome, and um I'm gonna probably gonna butcher it. Is it Edwards, Patau, something like that? I'm
Mm-hmm.
not I'm not a medical professional, so my
Yeah,
my
they do
understanding of that
that
kind of
that
stuff.
here too.
Yeah, so then they'll do those as well, and they'll offer that along with a scan. So then the scan and the blood test will combine to tell you your percentage, like probability of having a child with Down syndrome.
Oh.
And yeah, so then as you progress, get more contact, and then but you get less scans. So it's just how that works. And then once you reach your third trimester, and then you're getting closer to giving birth, then they ask you to write up a birth plan. And then depending on the position of your baby and your personal circumstances and your health, that kind of stuff, then they might send you to a consultant, which is usually someone who will orchestrate a C-section, a planned C-section, or you continue through the midwife um, like direction. And then, but just because you're with a midwife the whole time doesn't mean that you can't get medication, be at a hospital. You know what I mean? Like you can still have all of those same things, but even though you're at a hospital,
Mm-hmm.
it will still be mostly midwives. But if you're going to be more medicated, it'll be midwives and nurses. And then the physician or the actual like doctor will come in mostly like at the end just to like double check everyone's cool or to just as like an emergency thing, like he'll come in, like he'll take over. So generally that's like how it is.
That's very interesting because it's the complete opposite, really, of how it is here in Canada, and at least in Ontario. Most people will go straight
Hmm.
to an OB, and then a few people will go through a midwife. A lot of people don't even realize that midwives are completely covered by our public health system here in Ontario. So it's free, even if you choose to deliver at home. OHIP covers it. All the supplies, everything, they'll bring everything. They'll bring like a resuscitation kit, they'll bring medication. They can even run an IV and antibiotics at home.
Hmm.
So that's all covered if someone chooses to have a home birth. And if you choose to have a midwife and you end up choosing to birth at the hospital or not, it's home and then it transferred to a hospital, regardless. If you do have to go to the hospital or something happens with your care and you need to switch to an OB, that will happen very smoothly in the hospital. The OB will take over. But what's interesting and why I love midwifery care, and I always suggest people go with that first, is you get to keep the midwife. They don't usually just abandon you, even if your care has been transferred. So in my case, I ending up in a C-section, and my midwife got to stay at the head of the surgical table, right there, just reassuring me and calming me. So it's almost like you have this extra nurse, extra person there, because you're only allowed one person with you in the OR. So your midwife is the second person who's not responsible for doing anything until the baby comes out. Then they'll take care of the baby in most cases, unless they need additional care, then the pediatrician will be there as well. But it's really nice. You just get to have this extra support person. And if you do need the extra care, you will have the OB. But if you don't, you get to have a midwife that will follow up with you at your house after. And with an OB, that doesn't happen. You have to go see them at their clinic for the follow up.
Yeah, so you can have the option of having a home birth, and that's the thing in the UK. So with the midwives, they'll really encourage you to have a birth that's as natural as possible. So like they'll encourage you and they'll like I guess give you the concept that you're strong enough to be able to give birth without a lot of the extra stuff. But they respect the fact that you like if you want to have drugs and stuff, like they 100% respect it. Yeah, they're happy to get the right people to come over and do that for you. But yeah, and then with the same with a home birth, like so here, you have to just make sure that you put an application through your midwife to orchestrate the birthing pool that you can have at home and all that kind of stuff. So I'm not exactly sure like what the ins and outs are about home births here in the UK because I 100% did not want one, so I don't know. And then here in the
Yeah.
UK as well, after everyone gives birth, no matter if you had a C-section or not, midwives will come to your house after for about, I think as late as the first month. So they'll come, and then they'll come in, they'll check you, they'll check baby, they'll check the latch, or how formula's doing. They're not super judgmental or anything like that. And then they'll generally just they'll come and like check up on you, and then they'll come and they weigh baby as well. So they'll make sure the baby's getting weighed every couple of weeks or so, just to make sure that they're gaining the right weight and that kind of stuff, and they're charting them on their centile. So, Yeah, but no, it's super, I would say it's super comprehensive and everyone gets that. So if you had a C-section, you're still going to get the midwife to come and check on you.
That's amazing. Yeah, I love the continuity of
So
care
yeah.
and the home care because here in Ontario, unless you have a midwife, no one's coming to your house. And most people don't. There aren't that many midwives. So, what happens if you have a midwife, they are also the primary provider for your baby for the first 6 weeks. So, it's the same. They're weighing your baby, they're doing all the checks at home, and then later on at their clinic. But those first few appointments, they come to your house. But if you don't have a midwife, and even if you had a C section, 2 days after, usually 24 to 48 hours after you've gone home, you have to go see a pediatrician. So you're having to leave the house sometimes in the middle of the winter, right after having had major surgery. Or if you're unable to leave the house, then your partner's leaving the house with the baby. But most women do not want to be parted from their baby that soon. So they are leaving the house just a couple days after with their fresh scar and having to get in the car, go see the pediatrician. So it's awful. So I'm glad to hear that in the UK they're doing that right.
That's awful. That's terrible.
Yeah, yeah, it really is. It's starting to change.
Yeah.
Some hospitals they're
Yeah,
trying.
because yeah, here my most of my friends have had C-sections, which I don't know what that says. And that's not a slide against them, but I'm always cautious about how quick people are to put through C-sections. I'm just a little bit cautious about it. Like, not that I like, obviously, some of them were emergencies, some of them I think didn't need to be induced personally, but obviously, I don't know their personal care. But in the UK, there is like a they discourage you to choose C-sections. They very much discourage you as much as possible. They try to like almost like tell you that that's not an option, but it is an option. It is your right. You can choose to have a C-section. But yeah, I think for me, it was just I was always just concerned about like forceps and that kind of stuff, and I just always happy to have a C-section if it was necessary, kind of thing. But yeah, here they discourage it as much as possible, but when it push comes to shove, they're quick to bust out a C-section, if you know what I mean.
Yes, yes. Here, I think it's
So
similar.
yeah,
Like, you can choose an elective C section. They'll probably ask you why, but then it's your choice. They'll let you go through with it. But inductions are so, 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 so common. And a lot of the time, women are not receiving the proper education in terms of what that means, why they're being induced, if it's truly necessary, if there are alternatives, and what the consequences are of that, like how much more likely they are to end up in a C-section from having an induction. A
exactly.
lot of the women I've spoken to, they're like, oh, no, they never really told me about all the risks and stuff like that. It's just like, oh, you're just going to be induced. It's just like, oh, okay, I'm just going to get to meet my baby sooner. And they're not really fully educated on what all of that means, what all those interventions can cause. So this is why I love talking about this.
Yeah, like here, they'll let you go up until 42 weeks. So then they'll let you go like right over it. They'll check you all the time. So you'll be back at the hospital getting checkups like every 3 to 4 days. They're gonna see you, but if they check and everything's fine, they'll just let you go and go and go, and then they'll offer you an induction at 41 weeks. Then they'll offer you an induction at 42 weeks, and then they'll start saying like, right, well, when we hit 42, we're gonna have to get this baby out, but they generally let you pass, like they let you go over. And like most people aren't born on their due date. You know, most people are born a week later, sometimes two
Yeah.
weeks later. So like here, they're quite chill about that.
Ultrasound can't estimate perfectly, and there's always the nuances between like how long your cycle is. So due dates are not 100% accurate. Most babies are not born on their due dates, but it's interesting, yeah, to hear that they do wait that long. They are here. From what I recall working in a labor and delivery unit, most inductions were around 39 and 5, maybe 40 weeks. But I don't recall any that was 41 or over. They're rare. They're usually doing them earlier here. So when you were pregnant and you were going through the care with the midwife, what were your preferences for birth? Did you have a plan? Did you already know, okay, this is exactly what I want? Or were you just kind of like, tell me what to do, and you just go with the flow? Did you have a plan? How'd it go?
Sure. So my plan was to be as medicated as possible. So I had asked for all the medication available to me. I wanted an epidural, I wanted everything, all of it. And I wanted it to be extremely hospitalized birth. I feel like that brought me comfort. The idea that there could be a specialist at my beck and call if I needed it. And then another part of my birth plan was that I wanted nothing to do with forceps or a ventouse. Like I did not want my baby sucked out of me. If for whatever reason they needed to do that procedure, just give me a C-section. Like if just cut me open and get the kid out. Like I don't want you to be bringing in your medieval tools up in my body. Like no, thank
Yeah,
you.
I get it.
Especially because a cousin of mine in Brazil, he was injured. Like he has a birth
Uh,
injury, and it made him like special needs
uh,
because the forceps caught him
uh,
like on the temple, not under his chin.
uh,
So do you know what I mean? Like I was just like definitely not.
yeah.
Like we were very cautious about that. And then originally my plan was to just go in and then to be as medicated as possible. You know, but yeah, but it went really the exact opposite way of that, but in like a positive way, which I wasn't expecting.
So go back to that very first day and tell us the birth story. Did you go into spontaneous labor? How'd it go?
Sure. So I was 41 weeks, and then they had booked me in for an induction the day after. So day after 41, so it was 41 plus one, and then or two. I don't know how you calculate it. Yeah. So I had my induction booked in, and then I started going into spontaneous labor at 41 weeks. And at first, it started off like it felt like period cramps.
Mm-hmm.
And then I had spent the first week 40 just doing everything I could to get this kid out. So I was like eating spicy food. It was like, extra time in the bedroom. We were like drinking, like I was literally downing. Like someone told me that if I blended an entire
Uh,
pineapple into a juice and drank it, it would start it. And I was like, let's go, let's go. I don't even really like pineapple, but I was drinking this pineapple juice. I was doing everything I could, going on long marathon walks, like huge walks. And then eventually I just rested. And then after doing all that kind of stuff, and then I just went into spontaneous labor. And at first it felt like just like normal period cramps. And then I was feeling kind of cocky. I was just like, oh, I got this. Like all those ladies screaming on TV, like I don't get those girls. Like I'll be fine. Like, and then my husband's like, yeah, okay. And because in the UK, they encourage you and your partner to do like not hypnobirthing course, but like a birth awareness course. I can't really describe what it is, but
mm-hmm.
they expect you both, they will not expect, they encourage you heavily to both do this course. And it talks about like oxytocin and like how that helps with birth and like low light and a calm environment. So they give you all of that
Mm,
information. So I thought, okay, like I originally when I was first doing it, I was like, this feels a bit woo, but a bit woo woo for me. But then I thought, you know what, like the science is obviously there. So I said, okay, I'm going into spontaneous labor. We've got this. It feels like a period cramp, no big deal. So then I put Jordan put on my playlist, and then he did the lights. I was on my exercise ball, just having a nice time. Like I said, feeling really cocky, feeling amazing. And then all of a sudden it wasn't fun. I was just like, all of a sudden it just hit me, and I was just like, okay, I was like, get on the phone to the midwife and tell her I'm coming. And then he in a panic was calling. He's just like, oh my gosh, I think it's time. And then they were like, oh well, just wait a bit longer, because what they try to do here is they try to keep you at home as long as
yes.
possible. They don't want you in before you're about 4 or 5 centimeters
Mm-hmm.
dilated. They don't want you in
Yeah.
there. So so they were like, no, it's fine. She's like, oh, she's good. Like just tell her to like eat some snacks and try to get some sleep. And he was like, she told you to get some sleep. And I was just like, you call her and you tell her that I was like, you tell her that we're going. But I have to say one thing though, that those courses really helped me, and it was a specific phrase where it was like your body is feeling pain, but it's a natural pain. It's not a pain that something's wrong. It's a pain that you're doing something. And I found that really, really helpful. And then there was like these affirmations that they would say that I would always make me roll my eyes whenever I heard it, but they actually worked. Like where I was saying, like, your body's meant to do this. Like this is what your body's meant to do. Like your body is made to give birth. It's made to do all these things. Like, so the pain that you're feeling is not actually pain. It's a muscle contraction. It's like, and then so even though it hurt, so it's like it. I wasn't afraid. And then that was something that I found really powerful. I wasn't afraid while it was happening. I wasn't spiking like a fear response in me. I was just like, okay, here we go. Let's go. Let's do this kind of thing. But obviously it started hurting a bit much. And now I thought, okay, this is my moment to get my epidural. So we got in the car and then we drove like as fast as possible to the hospital. And then it was during the pandemic. So then they only allowed your partner in if you're already 4 centimeters dilated. No, 5 centimeters dilated. And then when I got in, I was 4. And then they said, okay, you can come in, but your husband has to wait in the car. And then you can have this room by yourself that you can try to like, keep it going a bit more. They gave me like these exercise balls and stuff. And they said, like, you crack on, like, and then I had a TENS machine as well that I was using, which I'm not sure if it helped. It was more like a distraction.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm not gonna throw it away. But I was using it. And I thought, okay, not sure how useful, but I'm gonna use it. And then they came back in and they checked me, and they always ask. They're really polite about checking. They say, oh, do you consent to me putting my hand in there and like, having a look or checking it out? I'm always like, yes, please, for the love of God, like just check out whatever you need to check out so that my husband can come in. And then finally my husband came in, and then they said, so this is your option. He can come in, but then you have to go to the Haven suite, and the Haven suite is like where like, and then I'm gonna it's not I don't want to be derogatory, but it was like the most hippiest like of places, to give birth. They were like, they had like the CD of like whale music, and they had like the birthing pool, and they had the aromatherapy. It was like everything that was the exact opposite of what I wanted.
That's awesome. And that's
They're like,
in the hospital.
You can come in, but you have to go to this. Yeah, so that's in the maternity unit. So in the maternity unit, there's like 2 chunks of the maternity unit. There's like the hippie side, and then there's like the clinical medical side.
I love that. Do you guys also have birth centers, or is that not even necessary since you have both of those options within the hospital?
No, so for example, they're attached. So the Haven is a birth center, and then it's attached to the maternity unit. They're both in the maternity unit, but it's like one floor is the birth center, and the rest of the floors are like hospitally birth.
Gotcha. That's awesome. I love that it's in the same place.
Yeah, and then they gave me a midwife, and then they said, all right, well, she'll help you get into the room and get your stuff sorted out. And then as I waited for Jordan to come through, I said, do you have any drugs? Like I said, I need some drugs, like any drugs you got. And I was joking, and I said, even street drugs. I'm happy to just do whatever you got going that will take the edge off. And they were like laughing and stuff, and I was like, yeah, cool. And then they handed me like a little cup of it was like a Oromorph, I think. It's like a oral morphine or some sort of oral like painkiller, but in liquid.
Okay.
It's horrendous. As soon as I put that through my lips, I vomited straight away.
Oh.
I just was completely sick. And it was quite funny just because it was so unexpected. I then sicked up all of the nuts, raisins, all the like the slow release energy foods that I had planned earlier to use for energy. Yeah, so that sucked. But and then eventually Jordan came in and they filled up the pool for me. And then I was looking at it like, oh God, can you just give me drugs? Like, why are you filling up this pool for me? Because I was really apprehensive about using the pool. So yeah, so I was just really apprehensive about using the pool. And then so they filled it up, and then and I got in. And then to be honest, it was like the TENS machine. It was like a distraction. I was now giving birth, but then now I'm giving birth and I'm wet. So that's just a distraction technique for me. So and then I kept, every time the midwife would come in, I said, I don't want to give birth in the pool, and she'd be like, why? It's like, it's so nice, like it's such a lovely experience. And I'm like, yes, but like they practically evacuate the swimming pool in the building where there's a swimming pool if someone does like a poo in the pool, and like I'm I'm probably going to be, let's be real, I'm going to probably be doing a poo in this pool, and you're not going to empty out the water and get me fresh water, are you? So I said, I can't give birth in this pool.
That's a lot of women's worry as well. They have the little poop scooper.
And I knew that it would happen because apparently it's a good
Yes.
idea to do it. But I don't know that they scoop the poop out, but like I was just like in my head about it. I was just like, oh my gosh, like the water's gonna be unclean, so
Yeah,
I
no, a
literally
lot of
couldn't do it.
women are scared of that.
Yeah, and then but the women were really like the midwives were really great, and they were like joking with me, and I was trying to, and every between contractions, I was trying to like joke and like have a nice time, and then eventually I was like, right, the lady was like, okay, we'll come back in an hour to see how far along you are, and then yeah, and then we'll check you and everything like that, and then Jordan was like in the pool, like not in the pool with me, he was like next to me, just like talking to me. And then after some time went by, I was just like, okay, I feel like I'm more far along than like they think I am now. And I said to Jordan, like, I need you to call the midwife and tell her that I'm almost ready, like, to get out of this pool. And then he was just like, oh no, no, she'll be back in an hour. Don't worry about it. And then I literally got his face like this out of the pool, and I said, you have to get the lady. And then he was just like, no, she's busy. Like, you're fine. You got the... And I was like, if you don't get the lady, I'm gonna scream fire or help.
Thought you were overreacting.
And then I started screaming help, and then they just
No
burst through the
way.
doors like some, yeah, and then they burst through the doors like crazy, like there was something horrible happening. And the contraction had just finished when they came through, so I was like, hey, can you get me out of this water? So yeah, and then I got out, my water broke. I got onto the bed, and then they checked me, and I was already about 5, 6 centimeters. Yeah, and then so as soon as they did that, then they finally offered me gas and air. I don't know what you guys call it
Yeah,
there.
we got laughing gas.
Laughing gas, okay. Yeah, so they finally offered me that, and then I was just huffing that like crazy, and it was amazing. It was so good, and I was having a great time. It felt like I was at the pub having a nice time, but
That's
I
so
wasn't
funny.
really
So if
drunk.
helped.
But like I was also giving birth, so it wasn't super fun. I
I
was just
love
having a
it.
good time. And then the contractions felt like they were no big deal, so I was just huffing this gas and air. And then every time a midwife would come in, I'd be like, "Stop! Where is my epidural? Where is my epidural?" And then they checked on the list to see where I was. And then because I was a low risk pregnancy, I was healthy, everything was fine with me in general. I was on like I was like number 9 on the
Oh,
list for my epidural.
wow.
So she was like, okay, well, we've got some ladies who have a lot of things going on, and like you're perfectly
Oh,
healthy. So and this birth is going great. So they were like, you're number 9 on the list. So and then they like brush me off, and then obviously I'm also high on this gas and air. So then I'm like, I pay my taxes. I'll just like, give me my gas and air. And they were like laughing, and I was laughing. It was
I love it.
funny.
Lots of laughter throughout this whole thing.
But then eventually, yeah, we're just joking. Like, it was a lot of joking. Like, and then eventually they swapped around to a different midwife, and then she was a bit more of like a strict, like older, like you know what I mean,
Yeah.
like tougher lady, which I very much appreciated. Because the other one was a bit wishy-washy, so like I could like not bully her, but I could like take the
Yeah.
piss with her a bit, and then she didn't really know how to react. But then this midwife came in, and then she was just like, right, she's like, I'm gonna be real with you. You're number 7 on the list. She's like, you're gonna have this baby without that epidural. I was just like, oh
She's
God,
straight with you.
oh no. So she was just real with me, and then I was just, and then she was there the whole time, just like talking through everything, and then like, and then she'd show up with like with a little like cotton bud with like some essential oils, and she'd clip it to my lapel, and
Oh,
I'd be like, what the heck is this? What the heck?
oh.
And then, but it was really sweet, and she'd like put on some music and stuff like that. And then eventually, it took a while. In the UK, they don't like it for you to be in active labor for longer than about, I think it's like two
Oh.
hours. So they don't like you being in active labor, like pushing
Okay,
for
yeah.
more
The,
than two
mhm.
hours. So then they start getting funny. Yeah, so I was pushing for about 2 hours. And then she shows up and she's like, right. She's like, listen, game plan. She's like, okay, if you don't push this kid out, she's like, we're gonna have to use other stuff. And I said, you better not use forceps. And then Jordan was like, we are not using forceps. He was
Oh, I
amazing
love it.
advocating for me as well. And then she's like, we don't need to use forceps. She's like, we don't need to use any of that. She's like, you can push this kid out. And I was like, okay, we can do this. And then yeah, then she just spent ages like down the birth end with like hot flannels and like
Mm.
using hot compresses and like doing like
Mm-hmm.
perineal massages and that kind of stuff and like oiling it things up like so she just spent like about 40 minutes just like focusing on like those hot compresses and like
Oh, wow.
massages and oiling and like it was amazing. She was so good. And then I was huffing that gas in air like crazy, but I
Yeah.
was pushing hard but huffing and then she was like, you need to slow down on that thing and I was just like, I didn't get my epidural, I'm a huff. So I was just huffing it. But it was all fine. And then eventually I was able to push her out and then she was amazing. She like just like scooped her right out and then she put her on my chest. And yeah, and it was amazing. And then like we didn't really know anything about cord clamping or
Mm-hmm.
delayed cord clamping or anything like that. But here, if you have I mean, I can't say I had a natural birth because I was huffing gas and air, but
Yeah.
I had a vaginal birth. And so here they do put them on your chest and they don't really cut the cord for a long time. They kind of leave you to it
Oh.
for a while. And then so I think it was a good like 5 minutes
Did they
before they
clamp
cut
it
anything.
earlier than that? Do you remember?
So I think she clamped it at
Okay.
about 3-ish minutes, like give or take. That's what 'cause I was talking to Jordan about it, and then he was saying like, oh yeah, so she clamped it at around 3-ish minutes, maybe like 2 minutes
Mm-hmm.
after, 2 to 3 minutes after. But she says so they clamped it, and then they only really cut it at about 5-ish minutes. So like, because I was asking him about it if he
Yes,
remembers,
yeah.
because he'd have a better memory. So yeah, so then it was quite. I don't know if that counts as delayed cord clamping or,
Yeah, so
but
by the hospital standards, yeah. So here delayed cord clamping is 60 seconds. In the hospital, you don't really see anything past 1 minute unless you are straight up asking the doctor and being very specific because a lot of women will do research and then they'll show up and say, "Oh, I want delayed cord clamping." And they'll say, "Yeah, you're going to get delayed cord clamping." And you're like, "Okay, cool." And they think, "Oh, it's 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes." And they don't realize it's 1 minute. So you have to be very specific.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and she waited a long time, so there was no it was like after there was no hectic energy. It was like she
No.
like put her on my chest and then she was like just cleaning she cleaned up. So she cleaned up before. So she took stuff away, but like you know what I mean, and then set new papers down.
Yeah.
And then she came and then she clamped and she gave Jordan the scissors and then like so there was a bit of time from what
Nice.
what I remember. So
Mm-hmm.
she did some stuff,
Yeah, yeah.
before which makes me think that she just really left it. So they try to do it, like I said, as natural as possible. So I
Mm-hmm.
imagine like if you have a home birth in like a pool or something, that they don't really clamp it for a while, don't they? So
Well, they'll probably still follow the same rule here, even for a home birth, like usually a minute, unless
mm,
you ask, or depending on the midwife, they might be a bit more easygoing with it and wait a little bit more. But even in the hospital with midwives, it's pretty typical for it to just be that 1 minute, unless you do say, I want a little bit longer, or if they're maybe busy with something else or they're alone, maybe if the secondary midwife didn't show up, then they might leave it for a little bit longer. But here it's pretty standard that delayed cord clamping is a minute.
yeah, okay, that's interesting. Because yeah, like because I didn't know. So only after did I know that that's what happened. Because I never really specified, like I never asked for it.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I'm not upset by it. So,
Mm-hmm.
because in retrospect, it was a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so like I said, it was the exact opposite birth that I wanted, but for all the good reasons.
So you're happy in the end with the way it worked out? Like, if you could go back and you did have the choice to get the epidural, would you have preferred that? Or did you like having full control of your legs and being able to move around?
Yeah, because like I think like if I give birth again, I would like to. I would say that what I would do again is I would do it the exact same way. I just come in, but instead of waiting around and drinking the little liquid that's supposed to help me, I'm just gonna go straight in and ask for gas in it. and like just skip the pool. Just like
You know what works.
just let me sit on a ball, give me the gas and air. Yeah, just like let me do some
Yep.
lunges, let me sit on a pool, give me some ropes to hang off of because they gave me a lot of
Oh,
options. You could like
nice.
hang on some ropes and stuff. There's like
That's
so it
awesome
was
that
really
there's so
good
many
to be honest.
options.
They were like, oh yeah, we can rig up some rope and stuff. I
That's
was just
awesome. No,
like, oh
I
my
love
gosh,
it. I
rope.
love it that there's so many options.
But
But do keep in mind, they always say that there's no birth, like two births that are the same. So, your next birth, you might be going into it thinking it's going to be the same. I'm going to do the same things. And your baby might be in a completely different position, different size baby. Your body's different from the time, you had your first baby. And as you have more babies, things are changing. So what worked the first time might not be what works the second time. And you might find that maybe the warm water actually really feels good this time. And so keep that in mind that it can it can be different for the next time.
yeah, for sure. And that's another thing as well. It's like but in like let's say that my baby was breech, I wouldn't want to try and give birth to a breech baby. So I'd be more than happy to have a C-section. So like, I'm pretty go with the flow, with that kind of stuff. So it was all I wanted was to be heavily medicated, but I think what it's done, it's taught me
Yeah.
that I can do it without it. You know what I mean? I mean, not that I didn't have gas in air because that was
Yeah.
the best. That was literally the best. But it made the experience so fun.
For a lot of people, they say it doesn't make a difference at all.
Really, you're right. It didn't make a big difference in the pain, but it made a big difference like psychologically because then it was like forcing me to have like a really
Yeah.
nice time. So I was like, okay, this is great. Like, and then so I honestly look back at my birth and I think like that was such a fun time. Like, you know what I mean? Like I was like, what a lovely day. Like,
I love it.
like that was really fun. And and
That's so good.
and you're right. I did love being able to just like get up and just like walk, straight away. So after she was all cleaned up and then they like the cord was clamped and then she was on Jordan for a while. She was like, oh, you should rest. They bring you a cup of tea, they bring you a slice of toast, and then I smashed that in really quickly, and then I was like, right, time for a shower. So I got out of the bed and then went into the shower, and then I proceeded to faint in the shower.
Oh.
And then luckily Jordan could hear me making a funny noise, so he came in and he put Athena down, and then he came in and he like scooped
Oh,
me before I hit the ground. So he like saved me,
good, good.
and
Okay,
then
I'm glad.
he laid yeah. So I was fine, and then but then he laid me down. He like dried me off, and then he laid me down, and then the midwife came in and was just like, "Did you just try to have a shower?" I said, "Yeah," and she was just like, "You had a baby like 2 hours ago. Like, what are you doing? Like, just chill out." Like, and I was just like, "No, but I'm all sweaty." And then she's
Yeah.
just like, "Ow." And then Jordan was saying, "Oh, she fainted in the shower," and she was like, "Okay, well now you have to stay overnight."
Oh,
Yeah, because if I hadn't fainted, they would have just sent me home.
that makes
Yeah,
sense.
but because yeah, but because I fainted, so she was like, "Yeah, that's weird." So she was just like, "You get your hyper ass on that bed and you relax." And she's like, "Do not move from that bed." And then
Yeah.
yeah, and then I stayed overnight, which was kind of a blessing because we found out she had tongue tie and they got that sorted after much pestering by me. They got it sorted out. And yeah, and then I tried to breastfeed and that was horrible. But yeah, but then eventually like when by the time I got home, I felt like I had like closed up a lot of the things that I was curious about, like the relation to her and all that kind of stuff. And the physician came and checked her again the next day, like the pediatrician, I think, he does like rounds, and then he
Yeah.
checked her over one more time, and they checked her heart, and then she had a murmur, and then within 24 hours, it was no longer there. So I was glad that I stayed because then I left the hospital with nothing to worry about.
Sometimes it's very nice getting that extra support and just having a few hours where you do have extra help there if you need it as well. How long was the whole labor from the moment you started having the cramping at home to the moment she was born?
So I started having cramps at about 10 at night. Yeah, about 10. And then she was born 10 in the morning,
Okay.
like 10:13. So yeah, so it was like 12 hours total.
Well,
So it's
12
just not
hours.
bad.
Yeah, yeah. And I love how you were saying you knew that it was normal, the pain you were feeling, and that is just what your body was doing in order to be able to give birth, and that you weren't scared when it was your first labor, because a lot of the time women don't know what's normal, how much pain is normal, because it can be such an intense pain. So a lot of women will tense up and be scared and think, okay, this is not right, something's wrong. And like your midwife was saying, oh, you're okay, stay at home for a bit longer. But you were like, no, no, I'm coming in. Like, and they're going based off of, oh, first time mom, it's going to be a longer labor. You're going to be in active labor for these many hours. But everyone's different. And sometimes you will have a first time mom that from start to finish is 2 hours. It's not as common, but it happens. So I think every woman should be aware and prepared somewhat with the idea that they could possibly give birth at home. They might just be one of those few that have a super duper quick labor, even if their plan is to go into the hospital and get an epidural. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes it happens in the car. But most
Yeah.
of the time, you do have time to get there and give birth in the hospital if that's the plan. But not everyone. And like you said, you didn't think you could do it, and you did it naturally. And you're like, oh, okay, I got this. So good for you. I'm glad you had such a positive story and everything went well during the actual labor. And how was the postpartum period when you went home with your first baby? How was that?
Um, I honestly, I really loved it. Like, and I know that, and that the thing, of course, like I was sat on a donut and I was on they gave me arnica pills at
Mm-hmm.
Nika, like these tiny little pills.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if they do that there, but
Mm,
they gave us these teeny tiny arnica pills that I would take. And she was like, "Oh, that'll help you." I was just like, "Okay." I mean, this sounds like more like voodoo magic. Like, so but I was like, "Okay, I'll take these tiny pills." And then I just took them, and then yeah, I mean, I couldn't tell you if they worked or not. They probably did. For me, they didn't prescribe me anything. They just said, "Oh, take paracetamol
mm-hmm.
and then take these." She gave me like a tiny tin. Like it looked like herbal stuff. Like
Mm-hmm.
she gave me in a tiny tin, like these microscopic, like the teeny tiny arnica pills.
Yeah.
And then so I mean, I just took them because she was like, "Oh no, it helps with healing," and I was just like,
Yeah.
"Okay, like how the essential oils really help with my birth. Okay, cool."
Yeah.
I was just like, I'll take them, like
Yeah.
whatever, you're the professional. And then, but to be fair, I mean, it worked. Like I took them, and I suppose it's fine. Like, I sat on the donut a lot. And then I think the postpartum thing that I struggled the most was breastfeeding because
Mm,
they just kept telling me that I should just try breastfeeding. I was like, okay, cool, but like she's just like cut up razor blade style all over my nipples. Like I couldn't. They were both bleeding. I was just like, I don't know
yeah.
what to do with this. And then they were like, oh, use this little syringe, and then you're gonna harvest colostrum, and then you're gonna feed her through a syringe. And I was like, okay. And I was harvesting this colostrum, but I was harvesting for like 2 days, and they didn't tell me that I had to stop harvesting and then do something about it. They didn't really tell me. They
Mm,
just assumed that I would know, and I didn't. And then
mm-hmm.
and then when the midwife came again, Athena had lost a lot of weight really quickly. And then so she then scared me. She was like, "Are you like why are you starving her? Like how come you're only harvesting colostrum?" And I was just like, "Oh my God, like I didn't know that we had to do something different."
Yeah.
And then I was like literally like so upset. And I was so, so, so upset. And then a friend of mine came, she's like an
Oh.
angel. She came, ignored the corona rules, and then showed up with nipple shields. And she was like, don't listen to any
Mm-hmm.
of those midwives. Just have these nipple shields. Feed your kid however you gotta feed these kids. And then she sent me a link to a bunch of different types of nipple shields. And she was like, this is just a basic one. It might not be for you for now, but it'll work just so that you can get that a little bit established. And then you just pick one that works for you. And then
Mm-hmm.
after I got the nipple shield, it was like perfect. I was like postpartum was great. I was feeding her, she was gaining weight. It was really cozy. It was such like a lovely cozy time. And like I was healing up nicely. I had a 2 degree second degree tear.
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I had a second degree test, so it wasn't too bad. Like, um, and yeah, and then the midwives would come and they would like check Athena and they would check me. And sometimes they even asked Jordan how he was doing, which I found really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a lot of the time people forget the dad.
Yeah, so sort of be like, oh, and how are you, Dad? Are you all right?
Hmm.
Like, how's it feel to be a new dad? And do you have any questions? And so it was quite nice actually. And then I would say it healed up fine. Like, it was weird to have like a really squishy belly. It was really strange. And then lots of my friends would like drop off things like porridge and like oat milk, and they would say like this really helps with milk. And then someone
No.
would show up with like a different tea, and they drop it off at my doorstep. So it was really sweet. It was like a really nice time. Like, and even though it was during Corona, like I still got my mom and my husband's mom to come and like
Mm-hmm.
and mother-in-law to come and like and I really trusted what they had to say about having babies because they had kids. I'm alive, thriving. So I thought, who best to
Yes.
ask than my own mom?
Yes.
So then I only ever really got advice from those ladies. I never really did like a lot of online like research on purpose so that I wouldn't get stressed out. So in that postpartum
Mm-hmm.
period, I didn't do like any online research because I thought, okay, I'm going to Google something and I'm going to be dying. I'm going to be killing my kid, or you know what I mean. So I thought,
Yeah.
not to do that.
No, that's wise.
And yeah, and then I just asked the women who I knew who had healthy children that grew up and are alive. I was like, how did you do it? What did you do?
Yes, no, it's great. It's great to have that kind of support and having older women that have had babies who you can rely on and trust and take their advice and get a little bit of advice from one grandma, the other grandma, and then you decide what feels right. Use your own intuition as well. And sometimes researching, like you said, it can just generate so much stress and you can find the craziest comments out there. So sometimes that's the best you can do, especially in that very sensitive postpartum period, is just trust your instinct and then just talk to the people who are close to you for guidance.
Like, definitely. And yeah, but no, but I would say my postpartum was really good. Like, I have nothing to complain about. After I got the nipple shield, it was like all bets are off. Everything was good. Like,
Good.
it wasn't I mean, it was frustrating having to wash myself with that little like squeezy bottle nozzle thing. That
Yeah.
wasn't fun. But other than that, um, other than that, it was all
Good.
right.
I'm glad. I'm glad you had the support of the family and also friends dropping off stuff. I found that having food dropped off or having someone like my mom cook us a meal, it made such a huge difference. Especially, I ended up having the C-section, and those things, just like simple things, but they make such a huge difference in that initial postpartum. Just really taking care and of nourishing your body as well really helps.
Yeah. No, it was brilliant.
Good. I'm glad. And just to finish off, do you have any advice that you'd like to share if there are any new mums, pregnant women listening, or women that are, just listening because they just want to learn a little bit more before they become pregnant? Is there any piece of advice that you wish someone had told you about what to expect going into birth?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that you're stronger than you think, and it's a natural process. So even if it hurts, it's not hurt like cut your finger off hurt. It's like a natural experience hurt. So it's different. It's like you're not in peril. Like your body's just doing what it's got to do. And like to focus on that, like to focus like on the fact that your body's made for this. Like that's the point of your body, like your organs, that's the point of those organs that you've got. Like that's literally the whole reason they're there. Like they're made for that process. So just like trust in your body in that moment that if it's already started it, you're likely that you're going to be okay. You know what I mean? And I would also say an advice as well is to not listen to bad birth stories. Like if someone's trying to tell you their harrowing, traumatic tale, you can tell them to stop talking. I think that's totally valid. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so that was something that I did a lot. So when people would come telling me their crazy tales, I'd be like, right, I'm gonna have to stop you right there because this is a positive birth story only space.
Yes.
Um, Because like I didn't want to be freaked out, so I was just like, okay, if you're gonna tell me a nice birth, then I was just like, I'm more than happy, and that includes C-sections. I wasn't anti C-section. I was just like, if you had a beautiful C-section, you planned it, you had a lovely time, everybody was happy and better for it, then I was like, cool, I want to
Mm-hmm.
hear that. But if it was like some harrowing tale, like I was just like, I
Yeah.
do not, please don't tell me right now. I will come back to you when I've already given birth.
Absolutely.
Like,
You really gotta protect
so
your space during pregnancy. Some women do like to listen to a little bit of everything and be prepared for worst case scenario, but a lot of women find that that's not beneficial at all. So you have to be comfortable just telling people, save it for later. Like, no, thank you. And women should really be asking before they're sharing their very traumatic birth stories to another pregnant woman, because it can really affect them and scare them, and you don't want to put that on them when they're pregnant.
And yeah, so I would just say it's about like knowing that you're strong enough to do it, that you can do it. It's like just a part of the natural animal like life. Like, and then something that I would always think about as well is like I would always think about like animals that give birth, and like animals giving birth, they're never thinking like, oh my gosh, like is this birth going to be
Mm-hmm.
okay? No, they're just giving birth in a field. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Like, so I was kept telling myself like I am also an
Yeah.
animal. Like I might be a really clever monkey, but I'm ultimately just another monkey on this planet, and they give birth all the time in the jungle.
Yeah, that's right. And they're left alone
So
and they do their own
yeah,
thing, and it works out most of the time without any interventions.
most of the time, yeah, and like when it doesn't, it's okay as well. And another thing as well that I will also give advice to is like I would also say like you don't have to be a martyr. Like if you wanted the natural birth, but then it's getting too real, and then you now want the epidural, get the epidural. Like you don't get don't get like a
Yeah.
medal, like you don't get a standing ovation, like you know what I mean? It's just how you are experiencing that
Mm-hmm.
situation. Like you don't get bonus mom points for you
Mm-hmm.
know having a water birth. Like it's just like if it hurts too much and you can't handle it, just do the drugs.
Yeah,
Like just get the drugs.
absolutely.
Just
Yeah.
do what you got to do to have a positive birth experience. Like,
It's so different for each
yeah,
person, right? And even each pregnancy can be so different, the pain and what your body is able to tolerate each time. So it's so important to just really just trust yourself and listen to your intuition. So I love that. Thank you for that advice. I'm sure it'll be helpful to the people
yeah.
listening. Well, thank you so much, Agatha, for taking the time to chat with us and tell us your story. I'm glad you had a beautiful journey during your pregnancy and your birth, and that your postpartum was well supported as well. I wish you all the best. If you do go on to have more babies, we'd love to hear how the next story contrasts to this one, and if you learn new things, we'd love to hear from you in the
Sure.
future. So thank you so much for your time. Did you have any lasting words you wanted to say? Anything else?
Best of luck to the mamas out there who are going to give birth. Like, you're going to be all right. And no matter how that kid comes into the world, everything's fine. You're going to be fine.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It
Pleasure.
was a
Bye bye.
pleasure. Thank you so much for tuning in to Birth Unboxed. If you've enjoyed today's conversation and want to hear more, please consider subscribing to the podcast so you never miss an episode, and leaving a review. I'd love to hear your thoughts or even your own birth stories, so feel free to connect with me via Instagram at thebirthunboxed.podcast or through my website linked in the show notes. Until next time, friends.